I'll let it happen organically, Beck, because it will.
Yeah,
And Nick,
no,
if
it
you
will.
could share the screen, then I can put up the agenda and everything. I've got it all on my desktop.
Thank you, Chris.
You have permission to share.
And there's Jay. And Scott, and being shortly after 5 o'clock, we will call to order the Transportation Committee. And I don't know what day it is, April 27th. Some of us are on vacation and that feels good. So Chris, I don't have a copy of the agenda with me, so I will turn it over to you.
Okay. How do I get my screen to show up here?
Hit the green share screen button at the bottom. And that should take you to your documents that you might have open.
Everybody see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. All right, so what I've done is we've got Mike Horton, our project manager from Skillings with us. And so I thought I'd arrange the agenda so that we could go first with the roundabout project. So we don't keep him any longer than absolutely necessary. So first on the agenda, is there any issues with the agenda or anything we want to add to the agenda?
No,
No.
the agenda looked fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a time, I've got to go to the order, but I'll hold it till then.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and we'll just launch right into the project here. So this is our concept for the roundabout. So as a reminder from our previous discussion, we're pretty heavily constrained with the existing right-of-way and the wetlands and our need to accommodate stormwater in a cost-effective way. So, and this is the kind of the optimal layout that we came up with to keep the costs in check as best we can on this project and make sure we can permit the project in a reasonable amount of time. One thing to note is maybe Mike, you could talk about how the this layout accommodates the vehicles and other users.
Mike, you're muted. There we
Yeah, it's been an ongoing problem with me and meetings. The roundabout itself to go north and south has been designed for a WB 67 vehicle. It will go up on the truck apron to make the corner. It can also make the corner onto Lincoln Avenue. We've designed the west leg of the interchange or of the roundabout for WB 40 to make certain that large vehicles can still get into the storage container at the bottom of the picture. Buses, both school and transit buses, can drive the circle without ever encroaching upon the apron, so they would have a non-bumpy ride to make all movements through the roundabout.
Yeah. So there's always a trade-off between designing the largest vehicles and getting smaller vehicles to slow down and the safety aspects with the roundabout. So we think we've achieved a good balance with the design in that respect. Okay. So the other aspect of this is now that we've got some preliminary cost estimates for the concept, and we're right at the construction cost is right at $2 million, which we had 1.6 was what I had in the budget, along with a $400,000 contingency on this project. So we're right up against that window. We have a little bit of risk on the stormwater side, and we're hoping we can tighten up the project just a little bit to not impact the wetlands. You can see the WL lines that are out here are wetlands that we're trying to avoid. because we get into costly mitigation, the more of that area that we displace. I think it's like what, a 3-to-1 ratio or something like that. And there's other things we can do as far as restoring channels and vegetation. There's a whole trade-off of things that Skillings is looking at, but all those things require real estate, which we have limited amounts of, and they're also costly. So that hangs in the balance.
So Chris, at a high level, what are we looking at for landscaping treatments and street lighting?
And, we haven't spent a lot of time. We are including street lighting. And I think
Ornamental like we have on Tremont, or something less than that?
We'll look at how much LID we need in the project. I'm not as familiar with the Tremont as Mark is, but it may be something approaching that, but maybe something more minimal than that. We're hoping, from a cost standpoint and also from a maintenance standpoint.
I know that from a continuity standpoint, and McCormick was asking this particular question, that we held them to our standard, and which is the washed out lighting standard with that green, pole and the luminaire that we've picked. We know that as part of the TIB conversion, we are going to be converting all of our street lights to LED. And so again, I would want to make sure that this project is designed consistent with what we've got at Tremont, because that's going to be consistent with what we have out on the old Clifton Road. So,
But what I'm referring to, I mean, those are like a gas lamp type looking fixture on Tremont, where other places in the city, we have a Cobra head, and I'm just.
well, we can't do anything. I mean, I think we need to start with the same thing we did with the park benches. We need to, in our public spaces, Rockwell Park, McCormick Park, we have that gas lamp look. We know that over time, we're going to be converting to LED and getting rid of these Cobra heads. But for new construction, I think we need to hold to our standard.
And is the center of the roundabout proposed? I mean, the county, kind of went on the cheap there on Jackson and Salmonberry with just looks like Arizona with a bunch of tumbled rock, but on the other hand, I don't know that we can afford to have this, landscape to the same level as Tremont.
I asked Mike to look at the Tremont landscape and irrigation just from the standpoint of the Mount Vernon Laurel. That's doing really well out there. So we're going to try to pull from the success of Tremont, because again, that I'm not seeing weeds, and that's growing in nicely. So we are going to try to borrow from Tremont to some level.
And I'm pretty sure that in a roundabout of this size, that being able to view across or having some obstruction with vegetation in the middle is part of the design. Is that true, Mike, or do we have flexibility on what we put in the center?
Well, we actually, in the center, would like to make it where you can't see across.
Yes.
That would be the preferred.
So even trees could go in there.
Yes, yeah. You just have to look at maintenance issues, because you don't also want maintenance vehicles up on the aprons and those type things. But yeah, if you can't see you want to see the adjacent movement, but you don't want to see all the way across.
Correct.
So is it fair to say that we're maybe something like down at Bethel by Highjoy would be, an option?
No, that's got grass and is high maintenance. I think Mark's describing something more along Tremont with mountain laurel, maybe some trees, type. That's got a water feature and grass that gets mowed, and we have a landscape contract that's pretty expensive on that.
Need to go a little bit. Need to simplify it. Okay.
I mean, I think we could go with a few boulders and a few trees and some mountain laurel that's just going to obstruct the view, but they're not going to be high maintenance, and we don't want trees in there that are going to become 50 feet tall either. So we can.
Yeah, we can look at tree options. It's really, I've seen other locations, they've just put up either a large rock in the middle or, and use that for landscaping. I've seen artwork go in the middle. The issues with trees you've got to watch out is needles and leaves. And making certain that it doesn't conflict your roadway drainage.
Right.
We own a street sweeper.
Anyway, we'll look at, right now, we're looking at configuration, and I think we've, at least the group has decided that this is the best configuration. It allows the roundabout to be built in halvesies, pretty much. And we'll be looking at the Mitchell-Lincoln as a big part of tonight's discussion. Once we've got the channelization locked down, get the drainage locked down, then we can look at lighting and landscaping.
Hey, Mark and Chris and Mike, I had a question about the west leg of the roundabout. It looks like with that not coming off more at a 90-degree angle and having a radius further to the west, it's going directly through a small wetland there. And
Yeah.
so I believe the sequencing for wetland mitigation in our critical areas code calls for avoiding the wetland before going through it. And so I'm wondering, is there a necessity for that leg of the roundabout to be at such an angle? And the other aspect of having that angle is it seems like when Harold connects through to Lundberg, we're going to be seeing more cut through traffic going along Harold. And so the geometry that's here may, it almost feels like an off ramp to cut through Harold rather than sort of introducing additional turns into the or a chicane into the exit of the roundabout to kind of calm traffic.
We did look at other options here. The more you take it to that leg to the north, it's harder to connect to the existing road system and stay within city right away. We're very close to the adjacent property when we finally connect in. So this is to avoid a house and additional property to make it work.
The right of way being the Bethel right of way?
The right of way being further down Lundberg.
Harold and Lundberg.
So
Yeah.
you're talking about the house at the corner of Harold and Lundberg at the northeast side of that
Yeah.
intersection?
Yeah, so the more you bring this out straight, you have to connect into something. And the city's right of way does not go all the way over to Harold. So to connect back into Lundberg, we've got to start that transition kind of where we show it. This is not a untypical type roundabout. This is often the case. It is a little bit, it looks, we'll probably end up putting in a little bit more angles in, but this is like a 10% design, more of a schematic. So we'll look at making certain it doesn't look like a racetrack to go that direction.
And I think our environmental consultant feels comfortable with the mitigation and what we're having to do with the core and everything on this. So I don't think we have, there's quite a bit of mitigation that has to go on this project anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the exercise we've just gone through, is kind of the proof of concept. Can we accommodate all the right design vehicles? Is it going to fit within the right of way? What's our environmental mitigation going to look like? Do we think we can accommodate on within the existing parcels that the city has? And so we're able to check yes on all those items at this point.
And storm drainage being a key, how we're going to handle storm drainage with everything going on out there. So really, this is kind of the convergence of all that. And I think when Mike's saying right of way, it actually means our ownership, the parcels that we bought, and plus our right of way. Because these were the parcels that we purchased from the county.
Yes. So right now, the layout is contained all within city city-owned property.
Correct. Right of way and purchased.
Correct.
Okay, well, should we go ahead and move on to the alternatives? We're looking at, now that if we build this roundabout, what do we do over on Mitchell as far as traffic and other safety aspects for the project? And we've got a couple of different alternatives to show you. The first alternative up here would be the ultimate solution, where we'd have a sister roundabout at Lincoln and Mitchell, and then have some kind of turnaround and cut off Bethel and Mitchell, because we'd be able to accommodate all the traffic efficiently, and then we would be able to cut off that kind of odd leg from a safety aspect, and optimize the local access for future development and existing development on Mitchell. However, we're already at the limits of our budget, and we really don't have the funding for this option. But we just want everybody to be aware that we looked at this, and it's something we might want to consider adding to our TIP as we go through the process on this project.
I pushed,
Rough idea with the cost, additional cost?
it was
Million.
million and a half.
Yeah.
I actually really pushed for this option. I thought with Mitchell being closed off at the Y, especially for bus and school traffic, to come through the roundabout and then to take that left to continue north, I really wanted that compact roundabout. I did reach out to the TIB seeking additional funding. So I think at this point, as we get further through the presentation, you'll find that we did come up with a viable, what I'll say is an interim solution to this. But I think, as Chris mentioned, we really should look at adding this compact roundabout as a separate project. And if for some reason TIB came back and said, hey, we'll give you an additional $1.5 million, then I'd like to pursue this immediately. But I think we have a good solution. But this is the ultimate best scenario. We're just $1.5 million short, and we're already at budget. I'll say we're at budget right now, a little bit over, and we haven't, even though we haven't VE'd this. So
Is a cul-de-sac a part of the Bethel roundabout, no matter what, a cul-de-sac on Mitchell, whether the Mitchell roundabout goes through?
well, that's part of the options we're going to go through.
Mark, when you talked about $1.5 million, was that construction and property acquisition?
That was a rough estimate on the construction, and we were going to try to make everything, and I think everything worked within right of way.
The only thing that didn't, Mark, was the larger roundabout for fire trucks. Right.
Right, or the cul-de-sac, but we
The
were going to,
cul-de-sac, I mean, yes.
I was going to look at potentially doing just a hammerhead.
Correct.
So it's always tempting to chase the more desirable, more expensive solutions, but the other side of the coin here is that we have a lot of other high priority projects, and this wasn't one of our highest priority projects. We were just fortunate to get the safety funding, the city safety program funding. So I mean, at least in my opinion, I think the limited resources we have are better spent on trying to make sure we can leverage with leverage for other grants and complete other projects. And having this right now is maybe not the highest priority for the city in light of the other things other priorities we have.
But with that said, if the council decided that they really liked this alternative and they were able to convince the finance director to find another $1.5 million, this is the best solution. So, but I know we're not in that position, and that's why I reached out to the TIB specifically. So let's wait until we show these different alternatives and how we've kind of resolved this for now. And then we'll maybe come back to it.
Yeah, and Mark, I was just going to support Chris's statement about keep in perspective that this project was not the highest priority. It did pop up on us. We committed to it, we funded it, and we're still collecting that funding source. We still haven't fully funded this project from the local side. So we are relying upon another $500,000 of transportation impact fee revenue to come in to fund the current project. So to go bigger and better, I think you'd really want to consider what projects don't you want to do? I think I'll keep putting it that way. What projects don't you want to do? Do you want to take off the list now? Because
Right.
another $1.5 million, that's another big project.
At this point in time, I couldn't support that one. So,
Yeah. And we do have 2 other viable alternatives, so.
Yeah, let's get that.
And we want to look at, we want to look at our criteria, the number 1 being safety always on all transportation projects. The other one is making sure we, accommodate all the traffic patterns to have an efficient transportation system. And then the other one more specifically has to do with the school buses and transit buses, making sure that we have a very high level of accommodation for those vehicles. So here's the least cost alternative that we have. And what we would do is this is very similar to what we do for development projects throughout the city. We do a right in, right out for Mitchell at Bethel. And that has some safety advantages of reducing the left-hand turns, which tend to add more complexity into the traffic movements and have a much higher chance of having collisions. We also, Mike can talk a little bit more, but he's kind of realigning that intersection a little bit as well. And then we would utilize, we would change the stop control at the Mitchell and Lincoln intersection, which is relatively inexpensive.
We turn that to a 3-way stop so that let's say the morning school traffic has the right of way. And there's a different alternative where we close Mitchell off completely that I think works better. Because we want people to go through this main roundabout, turn in, and then they'll have the free left to continue north on Mitchell. So,
yeah. And Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're saying we could do a 2-way stop with this concept, but with the other concept where we cut off Mitchell, we may need to do the 3-way to accommodate the traffic, the inbound traffic off the roundabout.
Yes, a 2-way is an option here. We could keep the Lincoln. Let's see, you messed me up here. Westbound open on the bottom. Mitchell, closing Mitchell to stop signs, slowing them down. That's really a key to this intersection. The one leg that doesn't have a stop sign, partially that's due because we want traffic to be able to leave the roundabout and not clog it up. One of our concerns with going to a 2-way stop sign situation is the traffic that turns right from Bethel onto Mitchell will have a harder time getting out if they have to stop for both way of traffic. So that's why 2-way would work. We suggested a 3-way stop.
And here's the other alternative, or we could at this time go ahead if we wanted to maximize safety on the project and have an interim solution that deals with that kind of unoptimal intersection configuration at Mitchell and Bethel. We can go ahead and put a hammerhead fire truck turnaround. And so that's kind of a variant on the first alternative here in alternative 2.
and that, again, that just allows Mitchell from Lincoln to just access the church and the businesses that are there and undeveloped properties. And then it still allows for the main north-south direction to be the main flow through getting to the high school on the AM. So, but I still see this as kind of an interim fix, knowing that someday we will want to make Mitchell and Lincoln a compact roundabout.
Is there a reason that the cul-de-sac is only a companion piece to the Mitchell roundabout and not to a 2 or 3-way stop? Or let me rephrase the question. Is there a reason you couldn't go with without the roundabout on Mitchell, but have the cul-de-sac?
Well, the hammerhead is just replacing the cul-de-sac because of right-of-way constraints.
The hammerhead, the hammerhead works, a fire truck can turn around in the existing right of way. A fire truck on the small roundabout would not be able to turn around efficiently there. If you go back.
Just smaller cul-de-sac?
Yes, yeah. So the larger one would be needed for a fire truck, and it goes outside the current existing city-owned right-of-way. So that's, you could go with a smaller one, but that's the issue between the two. The hammerhead or this could be the same with a small roundabout. They're interchangeable.
Yeah, if the fire department said, yeah, go ahead and do this, if they preferred the 65-foot roundabout or cul-de-sac rather than the hammerhead, then we'd go that route.
So the good news is, I'm not sure we need to commit to any of these, alternative 1 and alternative 2. I think it'd be nice to build a consensus on whether or not we want to, if everybody agrees that alternative 3, the more expensive one, is out just because of the fiscal priorities for the city. Barring any kind of miraculous work that Mark might do his exchanges with TIB. I mean, maybe he finds out there's some money that needs to be reallocated to a project and they're not going to spend it all in a certain time frame or something. But that's kind of the point where the outcome I'm looking for from this meeting is, concurrence that, we've got the optimal design to present to the public on the roundabout, or something very close to that, and that alternative 1 and 2 would be worth presenting to the public to get feedback on the different alternatives.
Yeah, I'll weigh in and say I really like it. Again, Chris, you said that we don't need to make a decision right now on 1 or 2. Again, if Mark comes up with some magic fund, that would be the optimum. But right now, I concur with 1 or 2, and would like to think a little bit more traffic flow, what would be optimum. But I definitely like the direction we're going at, and I think you can move forward with presenting those 2 options to the public.
Does anybody have any feel for, so when we're looking at Lincoln and Mitchell, the 3-way stop works better with closing Mitchell off. So I think that's one decision, is that right in, right out at Mitchell. I think, I can't remember which option that was, Chris, but I think knowing that it's the consensus that we're going to close off Mitchell and get rid of the Mitchell Y. So this is alternative 1.
Alternative 1, correct.
Yeah,
this is the least costly of the alternatives.
But I don't like alternative 1 because it keeps Mitchell still in play, and then they're going to have the stop because we're emphasizing east-west direction. So I think that's one decision we'd like to get is, do we feel comfortable closing Mitchell off, or do we feel comfortable keeping it as a right in, right out?
I agree with you, Mark. I think we should try and close off that portion of Mitchell Road if we can.
The only thing I have on that one is just school flow traffic in the morning, and I'm just being blunt about it. And I don't like Mitchell out at right. I would just like Mitchell in north, period. But I personally, I like closing off Mitchell if we had to.
Well, we looked at making Mitchell just one way north, but the problem is
Right.
you've undeveloped properties there to the south and the church, and then that would be
No.
problematic getting to their property.
Again, I had a very simplistic look at it. I really like closing off Mitchell.
Beck, I know you have an opinion about Mitchell.
Well, right, because I'm old and I don't change really quickly, okay? And I'm the one probably of all of us that use that intersection the most, because I use it all the time. And I will tell you this, when I am going southbound from my house to Safeway or wherever I'm going, I always go south on Mitchell. No, when I'm going southbound, I drop down to Plisco and I take the roundabout at the bowling alley and hit Bethel. When I'm going northbound, I always take the Mitchell exit. So what you're asking me to do is not alter my southbound travel, but my northbound travel. But I can sense that if I left Bethel and went Mitchell and then I have a stoplight or a stop sign, that may encourage me to use the roundabout. So if the consensus with everyone else is to block off Mitchell to hammerhead it, I can support that. You're just asking me to change.
Well, the other thing too is if we made this a three-way stop, anybody that takes that right into Mitchell going northbound, they could potentially be sitting at that stop bar for quite a while because the free flow traffic east to north is going to dominate.
Right, that's just what I was thinking as you were talking. And
Yeah.
that's what would encourage me to, change my current travel patterns and use the roundabout. So that's why I can support closing it off at Mitchell.
Yeah, I think this three-way stop configuration works better in concert with closing the Mitchell Y.
And if I can pile on to Chris and Noah's comments, we rated all of our other design work to get this project almost funded. And I'm confident we're going to get there, but I would like to have some, which we had at the retreat, conversation about restoring those other designs on Bethel so that we can compete for future grants, because our grants will score better if we have more advanced designs. So we'd be setting ourselves up to delay significant delays for other elements of Bethel if we don't advance some design.
I like the direction we're headed.
So I just have one more comment as far as the difference between alternative 1 and alternative 2. I think the concerns that Beck is expressing, it is a little bit of a change. So it's a little bit heavier of a lift for us to, and I agree with Mark, and I think it's better if we can prioritize Lincoln, because from a traffic flow and traffic pattern standpoint, there's a signal at the other end of that. So we want to have that be the dominant road as opposed to Mitchell, which has challenges as far as access to Mile Hill. But it is a little bit bigger political lift. I could see potentially the school district with the busing, they might want to take that right and then take the right again without going through the roundabout, and that being a change for them. So, and then the other aspect of both of these alternatives is they are both safety enhancements. If we do the right in, right out, Mitchell to Bethel, that's a safety enhancement. And we're keeping things roughly the same. We're adding a little traffic, but we're going to do our traffic control a little bit better at the Lincoln Mitchell intersection, but that's about neutral from a safety standpoint. And of course, the roundabout is a huge safety enhancement itself. So anyway, they're all viable. Alternative 1 or alternative 2, they're all viable solutions for us.
Let me throw this out, Chris. the option 2, where that probably has a little bit higher safety, is for pedestrians. So if that was closed to vehicles, a pedestrian crossing at the street up there would not be the issue now. That's about the only other safety advantage it has.
I see it still as an enhancement because we're reducing the number of conflicts with motorists,
Yes.
the different things they have to
Yes, it is.
think about when they're navigating that intersection. So, but yeah, it would be, of course, the safest thing we can do is to cut it off. And
Yeah, we
from
would
a traffic
probably,
pattern-
just so you know, this is a schematic look of the right out. We'd probably have to angle it just a little bit more, or people will still try to turn left out of there. So,
Yeah, they would.
yeah, so we would probably angle it a little bit more in the final design, just a little bit.
But again, to leave this road open just for somebody to come up and hit a stop bar that's in the non-dominant direction, they're going to get frustrated. Now you're creating the potential for a frustrated driver that thinks they're getting through there faster and they're really not. And then you've got the cars that are coming up to take the right that then get frustrated because they got the one car going straight and they're all trying to turn right. So I think getting rid of this right in, there's no benefit to the right in, right out, in my opinion.
And I heard from Jay and Scott that they both kind of favored alternative 2. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it looks like we're going to prioritize alternative 2 unless I can pull off some magic. Then we'll go back to 3.
And everybody's still okay with it, you know, as we have these discussions with the next step for us is to take this to council for a work session. Also around that time and before the next business meeting following that, once this becomes a public discussion, we'll be reaching out to the stakeholders, the school district, Kitsap Transit, the fire department, police, and others, the neighbors. But we're all comfortable with moving forward with the roundabout solution concept and alternatives 1 and 2 at this point for the public discussion.
Yes, I believe that was our consensus. Was it not, Jay and Scott?
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. Well, any more questions for Mike or at this point? Anything else we're wondering about on this project?
Nice job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been great to work with the city staff and work together to get to this place.
Thank you. And thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for joining us during the dinner hour.
Not a problem. And by the way, just so you know, Beck, my wife shares the same concept with you as far as she uses Mitchell all the time.
Okay. Yeah, it's going to be, you know, I'm sure I'll adapt.
Yes. Yeah. That's what she told me she would adapt to. So,
Okay.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm just waiting for Beck to drive through the Tremont corridor because she's afraid of roundabouts and she's still.
Oh, no, I drive Tremont all the time,
Okay.
but I don't drive as Sedgwick. Yeah. Okay. So now we're down to the update section. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. PSRC, KRCC, and Transpol. What I will say there is we're still working on the CPPs, but I believe the transportation section, the element, I believe that Mark and Nick are both supportive of the language that's in that section now. Is that correct?
Sort of. I think Nick can speak more to it, but he was the lone voice from the planning group, and he was the one taking on other folks are, I think we're as close as we're gonna get.
Well, and Mark, I don't know if you've seen the language that Clay provided. I have not heard whether that language is acceptable to the county yet, though, based on council member or Commissioner Gelder's email or comments to you, council member Ashby. I'm not sure that they're on board with that language or not, but my perception of the situation is that the county has injected the centers, this rural centers discussion into the conversation to broaden the eligibility for countywide funding. And by broadening it and expanding that eligibility to rural areas, we would now be competing with rural areas for countywide funds, whereas currently the countywide planning policies or the multi-county planning policies in Vision 2050 pretty clearly state that priority is to go to centers which are supposed to be urban. And so that was the concern that I was expressing with my colleagues. And I don't know that that resonated as well with the other planning directors, but I also don't know that there is involved in transportation discussions as I have been over the years.
Well, one is they don't, and then back, you and I are both aware of the push, the last two funding cycles for straight up scoring. And so
I think what our plan of action would be is on May 4th, when the KRCC Executive Board reviews the draft CPPs, that the mayor and I speak to that issue. And then depending on what the consensus of the group is, if our desires are not supported, we have another bite of the apple during the project selection criteria for the next federal funding round. And conversations that we want to have with that are limiting the number of applications a jurisdiction can present, limiting the dollar amount per application, and requiring giving scoring preference to those jurisdictions that have impact fees or transportation benefit districts. There are some other things we can do, I believe, to make sure that the cities have a fair shot at federal transportation dollars.
correct. I just wanted to point out that if you look at this CPP agenda combined with the scoring agenda,
Right.
it sets up a situation that's unattainable for cities.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
That's all I wanted to-
Right, right. So what I'm trying to say is if we don't get support on this, we may have another avenue. And I think what we're trying to do with the rural center section, which is a separate discussion from transportation, is we want to limit growth in the rural centers, as well as making sure that we're not requiring infrastructure to go out there, whether it's in the form of transportation or in the form of other infrastructure like sewers or water. Yeah. Kind of two separate questions. Scott, do you have any input on that, being a county employee?
Sorry, my space bar isn't working all the time. No, I don't. I've not been involved in those parts of the discussions. That's
Okay.
been another division.
And I would just point out that, yes, we have another bite at the apple, but that bite is going to come, and somebody else besides Councilmember Ashby is going to have to carry that messaging forward.
Right.
So, Jay, I know you're the alternate right now. I don't know if you will step into that role or if somebody else will, but it's going to be very important for us to stay engaged going forward if we don't get traction on this first issue.
I think Councilmember Ashby has made it clear that I'm expected to start attending meetings.
So we will go down. Does someone want to talk about the Sydney Fireweed Stormwater Property procurement. I know that we discussed this at the retreat, so I don't know if it's something Mark was going to take or the mayor was going to take.
I can just let you know that I think I had a meeting scheduled. I've reached out to the property owner. We had a meeting scheduled with the property owner's attorney and our attorney. So we're moving forward with getting a purchase and sale agreement in place.
Okay, and I think that's probably the only update we need at this point. And then the grant received for Lippert, is Chris or the mayor going to take that one? An update on that?
I can. So did we cover that last meeting? I can't remember. But anyway, I had thought that we weren't going to get anything based on the communication I had from the county. And then it was a surprise that we in fact are getting an award and we'll be able to do the city's already funded the Lippert project minus the sidewalk piece and some of the ADA improvements, but we'll be able to do the full project. And so I'm pressing to get that designed this year and advertised at the end, by end of the year or right in January and get it constructed in the kind of late spring to early summer of 2022.
Do you want to go right into the Sydney sewer work that we're doing?
And that project has been awarded to ACI. And I've got a pre-construction meeting set up mid-May, and they're planning to start in the early part of June.
Okay, does Jay or Scott, do you have any questions about those open items that we have?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and we'll talk about grant applications. And I'm going to interject here that I forward to Chris and Mark communications I get as chair of the Peninsula RPTO. And some of these communications they get directly, some of them they don't necessarily see. But I have asked the Peninsula RPTO to put Chris on their email distribution list. So he should be getting those direct from now on. So do you want to talk about those grant applications possibilities?
Yeah, so the build program has been, that's a real competitive program. It's hard to meet the criteria, and now they've renamed it the RAISE program, and they've modified the criteria slightly, it looks like. So there's more emphasis on equity in terms of, and I think, our low income districts would play into that would be served by the Bethel suite of projects, as well as public transit. They're also have a slightly accelerated schedule. They want to, of course, get projects built with the pandemic. So, and we do have a considerable amount of time actually to deliver the project. It's not like other federal aid money where you have to spend it the next year. We would have some time to design and do the right-of-way acquisition and build. But this may play to our favor in the fact that the criteria has been modified that may suit the project better, and that we're positioned to submit an application within the time frame that they're looking for.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Would that be the full Bethel project, or would that be particular segments? Would we put in, one or more applications? How would that work?
So for the new RAISE program, we'd be looking to fund the phase one in its entirety.
So that's Cemetery, Blueberry, and the Ramsey, rebuilding
Well,
Ramsey Road.
I guess I misspoke. So minus the Ramsey portion, because that's not a federal route,
Okay.
but at least the Bethel pieces of it and the both roundabouts.
Did they indicate what the match was? Is it the 13.5%, or is it something other?
Oh, that's a good point. So the match has gone up. It has been 100%, and now it's 80. So while we might want to do a $10 million project, we'd have to consider how we would fund the 20% match.
Okay.
So that is a new challenge. But I would think that'd be probably worth financing if we had to do that, given the benefit of all that funding and being able to further the Bethel project. But that's a decision for council and our finance director.
Nick's gonna get us $2 million in impact fee revenue.
He's working on it. Okay. And then what is the pottery, I can't, infill project? I can't read that, sidewalk pottery.
Okay, so now that we've received the grant for Lippert, that's the next one in line. We'll go ahead and submit another application this year. Probably more than likely, we're positioning ourselves for the following year because we just got an award. If you look at the funding that normally would flow to the city and our fair share, we'd be getting more of that than our fair share if we got another award this year. But it's good to put our best foot forward.
Now, I have just a comment and a question in that council had a retreat last Friday, and there was a lot of discussion in that retreat, and there has been over the last couple of years about the preservation and maintenance projects and what's going to get funded and timelines. And there was just a lot of overall questions about that. And I'm wondering if at some point we have a work study session where we could kind of go over Chris's schedule and what those preservation and maintenance projects will look like, because it became real apparent that Jay and Scott and I had a lot more information than the rest of the council members. And so I would like to provide them a little education. Would that be okay, Rob and Chris? Could we do something like that?
Yeah, so June. May's got the community center on it. Either June and we skip July. June or July would work. I think we skipped the August work study. I'm fine with it. Just when can Chris put something together is
Right.
I'll defer to Chris.
Yeah, I think, I'll be focusing kind of a lot of my time on grant applications in the next couple of months, as well as the public outreach for our Bethel Lincoln Roundabout project. So for me, if I could let that slide to September, that would get me past that kind of crunch time for me.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a problem for council. I was just bringing it forward after our discussion on Friday.
So Beck, are you looking for, because a lot of what you're talking about in the preservation is going to be actual, one is when Christian, our new CE1 comes on board, there's some design work that he can get going on, but a lot of what you're talking about, I think is just some photos and things of some crack sealing and some pavement repair projects, using the equipment that we just purchased. Is that a part of what
Well,
you're?
yeah, maybe Scott can help me with this because he was there. It just seemed like they had questions about what we were going to do and when we were going to do it, how we were prioritizing the projects that were going to get done. Is that fair, Scott?
Yeah, that's fair. I think it would be worthwhile spending a little bit more time with them to get them up to speed and to be able to kind of talk with them a little bit more proficiently than
Right.
council members.
And that's my understanding, and my concern, Chris, is we can't wait until September to talk about it because we're going to miss the seasoning. And if we're going to do a presentation in September, photograph.
I don't think you can. I think September is going to be fine. You guys need to charge ahead with what you're doing. I think you've got the bulk of the work is going to be done in 22, and you guys have not. Chris has talked to you about crack sealing and chip sealing and the different types of applications we're going to, and those are when I bring those up to the group as a whole, it's foreign concept to John and Sean Kachardi. And so just educate them on what the different types of maintenance we're gonna do at a high level, and, you know, and how we're gonna go about this new maintenance program.
Yeah,
And-
that's,
I was going to say, at the last meeting, you heard from me about the kind of the Chris and Chris plan. I got out there with Chris Escara from operations, and we kind of schemed up our game plan for the next 2 years. And so I think we're on track to go ahead and deliver that, with the potential with a little bit larger amount we might contract out. But you don't need to feel like we're not going to be able to deliver in the next year if we don't get it in front of council. We might get slightly different direction and tweak the program after that, but we're on track to deliver.
But we will be doing some preservation this year, whether it's, still some potholes. So I think as part of the presentation, you should show some of the things that we've accomplished this year, even if it's like the design work for the Lippert project,
Sure.
what we're working on, big picture, but this is what we accomplished this year.
Jay's got his hand
up.
Yeah, if I can just weigh in for a second, and maybe this is too simplistic, but every now and then, Nick throws at the council about the upcoming permits that are out there. And, we take a look at them and we go, okay, cool. It's nice to know what, it's kind of an update. And I don't particularly want to wait till September. If we can do something that is very short and sweet, where we get an update every once in a while about what projects are going on through the city, and then it wouldn't be a full dog and pony show. It'd be just kind of a quick update, like Nick does with with permits. That's just an opinion from one council member.
And I've got to get going here pretty soon, but my good of the order is related to this, because I went out and talked to Chris and Tony out at the shop this morning, and I said, well, we had the council retreat on Friday, and if the budget goes as planned, when we talk about our mid-year review, the council would like to see $1 million in additional funding put, towards tree preservation and maintenance. And both their eyes got big, and Tony gives me his canned response every time I ask him to do something more of, I need 4 more people. And I said, you're not going to get 4 more people. And the long and the short of it is, Chris says, at the county, they hired 40 summer hires, but they have a much bigger operation. If we, I'm going to bring this up on my mayor's report tonight, but I think what we need is a couple more summer hires that will train as flaggers, so our guys can actually do the work, versus 2 of them flagging, when we bring that group together. So at $15 an hour for 3 months, which is the season we're going to be doing a lot of this work, I think it's money well spent to bring on a couple more summer hires.
And our fallback plan can always be just to contract out the work. If I'm contracting out $200,000 or $500,000 worth of work, I'm still going through the same process. So most cities of our size would just contract that stuff out.
and what I'm going to say is, the council can say we want to spend an extra $1 million somewhere, but if we don't have the resources to deploy it, or to deploy it, we're going to have to hire X number of more people. We need to be aware of that.
That's why I went out and had the conversation with them. Hey, they were going, well, what do you want us not to do? And I said, well, I want you to do all those other things too.
Right.
And so I think, yeah.
Yeah, my request was kind of a high overview, like you said. And Chris let us know at this committee at one point, what's a chip seal, what's a whatever, all those terms were, and how he was prioritizing the projects. And he could also address, what we can successfully accomplish with the resources that we currently have.
And I think to reiterate what Rob saw this morning was, we had a celebration of Sylvester receiving the employee of the quarter, and we had it at 8 o'clock, but half the shop was already out on the street.
Right.
So they are, their plate is full. So
Right.
I don't want to, I don't want to promise high and deliver low.
Right. I just felt it was a conversation that was important, and I don't care if it's September. I don't want to keep Chris from doing the work he needs to do to move our projects forward and move our grants forward. I just kind of wanted to give the rest of the council a more of an overview, remembering, of course, this is the first year, we're just completing the first year of the Transportation Committee. So it's a learning curve for all of us.
And we do have our new CE1 coming on mid-May with a transportation background. So I'm thinking he's going to be able to take some load off Chris as well. So.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss this evening or this afternoon? Nick, do you have any input?
No, I don't think I have anything else. Sorry, I've been responding. I got a lot of questions about climate change from a 17-year-old that I'm trying to respond to during the meeting here.
Is that Greta?
All
Yeah.
right.
I just want to make sure that Jane and Scott don't have any questions or comments, or do.
I'm good. I'm good.
Are you?
I'm good at this time as well. Beck, thank you for asking.
Okay, and with that, we'll go ahead and adjourn, and I thank Chris and Mark and was it Mike Horton? Be sure to let him know we appreciated his time this evening.
Yeah.
Okay, and we
See
will
everybody?
see most of you in about 25 minutes.
All right.
Beck,
Uh-huh,
you're the mayor pro tem, aren't you?
yes, I am.
Okay, you gonna be back in town in 2 weeks?
Tell me what day.
The next council meeting?